Time for the Friday Night Roundtable, featuring tonight a newsmaker interview with United States Representative Bill Giffords of Arizona's 8th Congressional District. Joining me on the Friday Night Roundtable, Jane C. White of the Arizona Daily Star, Jim Nintzel of the Tucson Weekly, and Linda Valdez of the Arizona Republic. Good to see you, Congresswoman. Thanks for being with us.
Glad to be back.
Time magazine says 89% of Americans currently have health insurance, and of those, 86% are satisfied with their current plans. What do you say to those consumers?
If you like what you have, you can keep it. Don't worry. I know there's a lot of misinformation that's being spread around right now, but single payer is not on the table. We're not talking about a universal health care program at all. What we're talking about is an option for those 47 million Americans that don't have health insurance, or the 20 million additional Americans who are underinsured. The leading cause of bankruptcies in this nation are because of a health-related emergency. Lots of people, in fact, 14,000 people today, yesterday, tomorrow, will all lose their insurance. So for those folks, we want to make sure that they have access to affordable health coverage. So we need to reform the system for a lot of different reasons, but for those folks that have what they like, they can absolutely keep it, or like what they have, rather, they can keep it.
Congresswoman, people are still dying along the Arizona's southern border. Illegal immigration remains a huge problem, and Congress doesn't seem to be doing anything to address it. When can we expect some sort of reform efforts in Congress, and what do you think needs to be in a reform package?
Congress is doing a lot to help the Tucson sector of the Border Patrol. The problem is that that sector, our sector, has been ignored for many, many years. There was a strategic buildup of California and Texas designed to funnel people through the most inhospitable part of the U.S.-Mexico border, our backyards. And the numbers that we have, even though they're down in terms of the apprehensions, because there has been more enforcement, more boots on the ground, we still are responsible for 45% of all the apprehensions nationwide and 47% of all the drugs. In fact, just last month, the Tucson sector hit a record of 1 million pounds of marijuana that was seized, setting in the 85-year history of the Border Patrol, they set the record. So 229 new agents were just sent into the Tucson sector. I was there with Chief Gilbert mustering them a couple of days ago. More resources are coming, both high-tech but also horse patrol. We've engaged with the Border Patrol to have more community involvement, especially for those ranchers out in Cochise County, the folks that are in the rural parts. So there's been a tremendous amount of improvement. But with a multi-billion-dollar drug trade and trafficking trade, people are still going to try to come in illegally.
Let's take it back to healthcare for a moment. Critics of the idea of a public option say that once a public option is in place, private insurance companies will not be able to compete. Well, what do you say to those critics?
Well, we can predict all sorts of things. Unfortunately, for those Americans that have no health coverage right now, no health insurance, they're really in a situation where they desperately need help. And by requiring health insurance companies to not deny coverage because of a pre-existing illness, requiring them to take in that 50-year-old or 55-year-old person who loses their jobs and then can't get access to health insurance, hopefully will expand the pie, and with other cost reduction measures will reduce all of our health care costs. You know, the reason why we're trying to do this, besides the fact that I think it's morally the right thing to do for our country, we're the most affluent country on the planet, we're the only industrialized country to not offer basic health coverage for every one of its citizens, is that 1 in every $5 in the American economy right now goes to health care. And if we don't reform the system, within a couple of years, actually about 15, 20 years, it's going to be driving to 1 in every 4, and 10 years past that, 1 in every $3. So healthcare will pull this country down the toilet, unfortunately, if we don't do something. I mean, we can't allow this to continue from an economic standpoint. So we've got a lot of work to do. The reform for health insurance is a long road. We've just started. There are probably 5 different pieces of legislation. There's a House bill, there's a couple of House bills, 3. There's 2 different Senate bills. And right now we're just still trying to process what they're all going to do. And as a blue dog, I'm really proud of the fact that we slowed the process down to allow the American people to better understand what this discussion is all about.
Does it make sense to continue having employers provide health care insurance for their employees?
Absolutely. Like I said, if you like what you have, you should be able to keep it. I've been doing some workplace town halls about health insurance, and there's a lot of great employers here that provide health care, and that's terrific. But I'm a former small business owner, and I offered some, I think, very competitive, good benefits when I ran my family's tire business. But unfortunately, there's a lot of small businesses that can't afford to do that. And you see double-digit increases in premiums year after year after year. So even those companies that now can afford to provide health insurance, in the future, many of them are not going to be able to.
However good it is to have slowed down the process so that people can understand health care reform, one of the side effects of that has been a ballooning of scare tactics. Throw Granny under the train, we're all going to be euthanized at a certain point by Medicare. How do you respond to those? How do you fight that kind of false claim?
I mean, just with education and good information. I had a healthcare town hall May 26th, and we had over 1,000 people show up and brought in some good presenters, some good information, and I talked about where I stood and got some good feedback from the audience. We did a telephone town hall for those folks that will never go to a town hall, they're not comfortable going to an auditorium, or they just don't want to, leave their house for whatever reason. And we had about 4,500 people participating there as well. Doing these other town halls, and I have a chance to really understand face to face. But having swastikas or degrading the president or shouting or trying to create a riot is not helpful to what we're trying to accomplish.
Do you think these flash mobs, these groups of opposition that are showing up, are in some ways organized by the insurance and pharmaceutical industry lobbyists?
Well, I know here in Tucson, the state head of Americans for Prosperity has come down, and I also see some of the email traffic and what they're trying to do in terms of targeting members of Congress's events and getting people. They also disseminate talking points, make signs, this is what you should put on your sign. So there's a lot of that happening for sure. But the bottom line is that people are angry. Americans are angry on both sides, not just on maybe the more conservative side. I mean, I've had protesters that are the single-payer protesters. Was at an event in Bisbee a couple of days ago, and very angry people about why aren't we talking single-payer. The frustration that this country's feeling is because we've ignored this problem and let it go on for a very long period of time, and that's why we have to act. The status quo is simply not acceptable.
Some of your colleagues actually have decided not to do any more public events on this. Some of the congresspeople in Florida have decided not to. I believe here in Arizona, Congresswoman Kirkpatrick has decided to only do phone interviews about this and not do public events. Are you still going to be out there publicly talking about health care?
Well, today I had a health care event. Yesterday I had a health care event. I did have a Congress on Your Corner that was planned, of course, months in advance down in Douglas, and we knew that people were likely to show up. So, what we did is we made sure that we had security available, and people, I extended the time that I was there because a lot of people showed up this time and met with people one-on-one and heard about their issues. So we're not planning on changing our schedule. I'm focused a lot on the military, as you know, being on the Armed Services Committee, and I'll be headed back to Afghanistan and Pakistan in the next couple of weeks. So this morning I was out at Davis-Monthan, 2 days ago at Fort Huachuca. We'll be working with the Air National Guard tomorrow and headed up to Luke later next week. So, you build your schedule weeks and months in advance, but my belief is you got to do your job. I mean, your job is to be a representative, and that's not just a job title to job description. So if you're going to represent people, you got to get out and make sure you understand what they're thinking.
There have been some signs that the economy is recovering, but foreclosures are still a huge problem in Arizona, and Attorney General Terry Goddard's been working with other attorney generals around the country on efforts to try and get lenders to work in a more user-friendly manner with borrowers who are facing default. He says there's not been a lot of success at that approach. I'm wondering if Congress should be doing something more to help people that are facing default on their mortgages.
This is a really difficult issue, particularly in Arizona where the numbers are so high, but oftentimes, and I have participated in some of these foreclosure workshops, it's even hard to get the people to show up at them. It's hard to get folks who are going to be foreclosed upon, some of them even to open the envelopes up in their mail because they're so traumatized and they're so unsure about the steps that they need to take. We're also pushing the lenders because a lot of these lenders we have bailed out. We've gone in and saved their businesses. We're really putting a lot of pressure on them to start lending and freeing. I mean, some of them are now paying back the federal government. Some of them are showing profits, which is all a good sign. Yesterday, I led a stimulus tour. I was curious about how our stimulus dollars were affecting our community. And I had a chance to see, for example, at the Pima County One Stop, what's happening to those folks that tend to get laid off, and then that will end up with a foreclosure situation if they're not able to get a job by the time their unemployment insurance ends. And it's just encouraging to me to see now that our unemployment numbers just for last month are headed the other way. They slightly dropped, and that's a great news. Also, in terms of the numbers of people who have lost jobs, went down. It's about 240,000, which is much, much better than the 700,000 numbers that we were seeing before. We knew when we passed the stimulus bill that we wouldn't see a recovery until the fall into winter. I'm hoping that here in July, August, we're seeing the bottom and we're going to start to climb out, which is, of course, going to help people be able to keep their homes.
Senator Kyle has said those stimulus funds are a waste of money. They should be stopped. And, of course, that led to members of the Obama administration writing to Governor Brewer asking if she wanted to give up the stimulus money that was coming to Arizona. Do you agree, or I guess, what's your response to Senator Kyle's comments? And also, was it appropriate of the Obama administration to write to Governor Brewer?
Well, I can't speak for the administration. I agree with Senator Kyle on many things, not everything, obviously, certainly not this. $6 billion coming into the state of Arizona, those are our taxpayer dollars that if we didn't take them would end up in another state. And like on the stimulus tour yesterday, when I had a chance to actually meet with the recipients of the recipients of where those dollars are going to, people are pretty happy. We've got 37 projects here in Pima County. We've got millions of dollars that are flowing back into construction projects. These are shovel-ready projects that are ready to go, shoring up our budget, shoring up our Medicaid program, really helping us get through this tremendous hurdle that we're facing right now. So I'm pleased that we're taking advantage of the stimulus dollars, but there's a lot of gamesmanship going on right now. But the reality is that 6 months ago, we were on the precipice of another great depression. I mean, the recession was so bad, banks were failing, we were almost at a complete meltdown in the economy. How soon we forget? I mean, now we're in a situation where actually the economy is coming back now. And a lot of it's because we infused money into the system, we shored up the banks, we tried to protect the U.S. auto manufacturers. I mean, we're doing a lot of really good work. But this isn't easy. I mean, it's never easy to take a situation that bad and turn it right around immediately.
Speaking of automakers, you oppose cash for clunkers.
Twice, yes.
Twice. That's the program where you can turn in an old, inefficient car and get a rebate toward a new, more efficient car. Why?
Well, a couple of reasons. One is I'm very interested in renewable energy. I'm very interested in energy efficiency. But the requirements for the new vehicle that you were to purchase were only 4 miles per gallon higher than what you currently had. So that you're certainly not incentivizing people to buy really energy efficient cars. Another concern that I had, and yesterday I was over at Don Mackey's dealership having a chance to congratulate him and to discuss all the great work that we were able to accomplish to keep his dealership open, was that we have U.S. auto manufacturers, U.S.-owned companies, but also manufacturing here in the United States, maybe foreign-owned, but at least the cars are made here, that were not required to be part of this bill. So the third part, the fact that we didn't actually pay for the cash for clunkers. We are continuing to borrow money from the Chinese to buy a car that perhaps was made in Japan to come back here. I mean, I just didn't think it was responsible. You know, we've had some good success with it, and I'm pleased about that. But as a blue dog and someone who's really concerned about fiscal responsibility, I just didn't think it was a smart piece of legislation.
We are out of time. I didn't have time to ask you about Rosemont Mine. I know a lot of people down in Green Valley very upset, and here in Tucson about it. Do you think the mine will go forward, the copper mine?
I'm not sure. I know that there's a lot of concern about a 24-hour open copper pit mine, but water really is the crux of the major concerns that people have. And we live in a desert, we have a drought, so there's a reason for people to be concerned about it.
Congresswoman, thanks for being with us. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much.